Hello, this is Social Advance with Alan Zundell, and today we're going to be analyzing the results of the election. I'm here with my colleagues, Randy Prince and Charles Dunaway. The three of us haven't been together in quite a long time, so we got a lot to talk about. How are you guys doing?
Doing well.
I'm still tired. I'm anxious. At this moment, it's 264 to 213 nationally.
Yeah, so why don't we start with that, the presidential race, as we do this on, what is this, Thursday evening?
Mm-hmm.
Still not decided. It's close. They still got a few states to count. May not come in right away.
Well, you know what's got me about this was every single poll, every one of them had the Democrats doing much better than they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they were supposed to win the senator in Maine. You know, there were so many places that Biden was supposed to, take in a sweep, and we're sitting here with these elections that are like 25,000 votes apart, 18,000 votes apart statewide. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, they were, and it's something is wrong with the poll.
Remember President Hillary Clinton?
Yes. I mean, it's twice in a row that they've screwed this up.
Yeah.
And they got to be doing something wrong, either intentionally or not. But
it was not only the presidential race, but they were expecting this blue wave across the country. They're going to retake the Senate and build on their House majority, and none of it happened.
Well, they're still doing polls by telephone, and the view, it seems to me, is they're just unable to correct for the approach they use of calling people. They say that it may just be that people who are voting on the right, or the Trump voters, are not interested in responding to polls. They're weighting the polls for those with less than no college education because they know there's more out there than they get involved, but it still doesn't add up to enough. I do think that the voter turnout was something they couldn't predict. And it looks to me like the Republicans stole the game from Bernie Sanders, and a lot of people on the left to say if we could just get all of those sympathizers to turn out and show up at the polls, it'd be way different than what show up at the voting polls or mail their ballots, to vote. Then it would be a world of difference between the reality we know. And that there certainly was a world of difference between the reality of the pollsters who did their best and what is being counted now. Is that there are low information voters who are enthusiastic about their campaign on both sides of the political spectrum. So everything the Republicans were afraid of about, people of color, maybe people who didn't have a lot of education, people that don't understand voting, they're too ignorant to vote. Let's suppress the vote. Well, now we had people who met a lot of those descriptors on the right turn out and say, rah, rah for Trump. I saw him on TV, he's great. That looks like a president to me.
Well, you know what? Latino man, college educated, all these people were voting for Trump.
Yeah, things like almost 2 out of every 10 black men in the United States voted for Trump. I mean, 18%.
Oh, 2 out of 10. 2 out of 10.
18%. And the black women, I think, was like 8%. And so, somehow to me, it makes no sense that working class voters are voting Republican until you factor in that the Democrats let their jobs move away to Mexico and China and, all the other stuff that they talk about. I mean, really, the Democrats have just abandoned working people, and they're getting paid back for it.
Yeah, so it seems like you need more of a message than "I'm not him."
Yeah, but it's what message are you receiving? And Trump did put out a message, and it was designed for the level of information that a lot of black voters received. They say, "Look, I pardoned these people. Look at the picture. They're, I think that I'm way better than Biden, who put in this crime bill and gets a few people here and there. So people are not listening to her, which civil rights leader, which intricate affair in housing or something. Trump has shown his racism. 1989, the Central Park Five, it's history. What they saw, enough of them, was the posturing, the made for television maneuvers of Trump. It was enough to draw a significant number away. Even the Kanye West ploy did not work, but that was another attempt. If we just get a black guy on the ballot, that'll draw them away. Then they got a better idea is let's just keep repeating over and over. Trump is the friend of blacks.
Well, on the other side, what was the message of the Democrats? I was trying to figure that out this morning and thinking that it's kind of the same. We're not Trump, but we're not Bernie Sanders either. We're kind of like Bernie Sanders, but not really.
No,
we're going to for all, but we're going to help with your health insurance and
right.
No Green New Deal, but we're going to do something about infrastructure and environment. It's just
not enough. No, we're not going to tweet garbage, day and night, and insult everybody. But that's about it.
In other words, we're going to be boring and do nothing.
we're not going to give you the Medicare for all. We're not going to give you a Green New Deal. We're not going to give you a jobs plan. We're not going to give you free college. We're not going to give you anything you want, except that we're not. Yeah.
But I think the Democrats successfully picked up on some Republican approaches, the framing, the feel-good aspects, and I think they're going to end up having done it successfully. Democrats have always focused, look, I got this plan, it's going to do this and this and this, and it's just something you bring up in the elections. People can be a little cynical, but they've responded to people that said, the great America, the Reagan, stand up for the country and feel good about it. And Biden, I thought, did pretty well at that. Playing the Republican game, you can feel good about me. I'm here for everybody. These types of emotional messages, he put in some references to plans, but it was not the stock Democratic approach of people are going to vote for our good program that is going to put money in your pocketbook. After all, they already knew Trump was going to campaign on that. I said, if it wasn't for the virus, which doesn't exist, then look at how great I did with the economy. Yeah. So it's more obvious that Trump was sowing hate and division. So they came off with an emotional Republican type appeal in their television commercials that I saw. And I think it's going to prove out that it worked in spite of the excellent results the Republicans got in voter turnout of the alienated voters that usually don't turn out.
Well, they both got millions and millions of voters. It just no decisive victory on either side. So yeah, we're gonna be living with this predicament for quite a while, I think, trying to bring this country together.
I think that's really the challenge. I mean, we've got a nation that's almost exactly split down the middle. In terms of the number of people who voted for Trump versus Biden. And, what's happened, of course, with the polarization is that everybody on the other side is either Hitler or stupid, or
both,
whatever, dumb. And so, we can't listen to them. We can't pay attention to what they say. And the same thing is true on both sides. So, how are we going to, how do we solve that problem and move together as a country? I mean, there's no unifying, message about America.
Maybe just getting rid of the chief demagogue is enough. After all, the guy is expert at, playing a personality on television. Mm-hmm. He's not a businessman. He's a con man, which means he puts out images. He doesn't actually make money in business. In politics, he puts out an image to rally people, but he's not a person who is able to intervene and put together legislative majorities very well. So if he's gone, I don't see there's a legion of Republicans who have actually been converted. I think they were just cowardly in the moment, and maybe you have people like Marco Rubio and Cruz backing off a bit towards their previous position of Trump's unfit for office. That's what they said before.
Well,
And
one
maybe
thing
they're
I'm
not
going
going
to
to try to
sorry,
replace Trump.
I would really like to know how many people actually were voting against the other candidate as opposed to for the one they voted for.
Mm-hmm.
Just like they said about 2016, a lot of people were voting against Hillary Clinton or against Trump, but fewer people were voting for them. If that's true again this time, it raises the question, what are people looking for? What would they vote for as opposed to against?
Well, you know what? The other thing that struck me about this returns, and maybe we should talk about it a little bit, is the role of money. I mean, besides having spent $3 billion on the campaigns that we know about, not counting the dark money, you know, we have these Senate races where the Democrats spent a bloody fortune. The guy in South Carolina who got creamed by Lindsey Graham, you know, the woman in Kentucky who just got nailed by McConnell, the woman in Maine who lost big time to um, the Republican there. I mean, they threw millions and millions of dollars into these races and didn't get any better results than they had back in 2016 or whenever the last time was when they had, you know, we're not putting that money in. You know,
Well,
it's like it's not making any difference to people
well,
anymore.
I am curious to know with those losses, because they were big, were the well-moneyed efforts of the Democrats not as skillful as the Biden campaign? I believe the Biden campaign spent their money pretty well in their advertising, the image they portrayed. And it was the Republicans' get out the vote effort, new for them to bring in this low information voter base that Trump cultivates. Did they lose so badly in Kentucky and South Carolina because of that, essentially riding the coattails, even if they were the losing coattails of Trump? Or were they as incompetent as Hillary at projecting a message that had some prospect for winning?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't see, I haven't seen how they organized their campaign in those states, because they would have wasted their money if they aired it in Oregon.
I don't know any. Yeah, I don't know anything about the South Carolina. I know in Kentucky, McGrath almost lost the primary in spite of them spending something like $50 million, you know, which to try to put their thumb on the scale. She almost lost it to a progressive at the last minute. And frankly, they might have been better off with the progressive against McConnell, who at least had some momentum. And I know that the same thing is true in Maine. There, you know, whatever progressive people they had, no, they got rid of them.
Well, that brings us to another topic entirely, which is if people are sick of the candidates that the major parties are putting forth, why aren't they turning to minor party candidates, especially when you have something like ranked choice voting as they implemented in Maine? You had that for the senatorial race, you had that for the presidential race. Yet it didn't seem to make much difference. The candidates for the minor parties or independent candidates were just still making in the single digits as far as their vote share goes.
I think the glass is half full. I looked at those Oregon results and saw some indications that if alternate voting systems can progress, that people are going to be open to minor parties. For one thing, it was interesting that it's only single digit, but there are people who are still voting just because of the party label, except in the presidential race. Howie Hawkins for the Greens got a minuscule vote, but the a candidate like in the 4th district for the Pacific Green Party did not campaign. He that I know of. He certainly didn't submit anything to the voters pamphlet. Didn't show up for the debate that he was invited to. Website was never finished. A zero campaign, and still drew 2% in a close race between a right-wing Trumpster and DeFazio, a fairly popular Democrat. And so 2% tells me that some people are just, there is a base of disenchanted people. And then on the other hand, or as well, you look at certain races where third-party candidates drew almost 5% or 4%. Chris Henry with the Progressive Party, Natalie Paravicini with the Green Party up there around 4%, especially in the urban centers. And so there are people willing to vote, but of course they know they're not voting for a winner. But if they had some idea that we're going to use a system like ranked choice or star voting, really, this results argue for that, because it was in the news, ranked choice voting, but it didn't play a factor in Maine, and it didn't play a factor here in Oregon. But people would, I think you could see minor parties do something if there was the alternate voting systems.
I should have meant my earlier statement that all of them were in the single digits, because there were two candidates in Oregon who got in the double digits, and both of them were unique situations. The one was House District 47, that's the state house. Ashton Simpson, the candidate of the Working Families Party, got 18.7% of the vote. And that was because he was running against a Democratic candidate who the Democratic Party was abandoning due to sexual harassment charges while he was in office. So if you can sufficiently discredit your major party opponents, then you have a chance of building on it. But he still didn't come close to winning. No. And the other one was a Libertarian in House District 48. I believe it was 20.8%. He got, and that was because there's only one major party candidate in the race. I forget if it was Republican or Democrat. I think a Republican. Not sure of that, but because there was only one major party candidate, he got greater percent. And it leaves me with a question. I counted 5 districts in the House and 4 districts in the state Senate where there was only one major party candidate. In fact, there's only one candidate. And it caused me to think, why the heck aren't the other parties, especially the independent party, which can usually draw a fairly good size of the vote, why aren't they running candidates in those districts?
I don't think the independents are running candidates, very few that come from their party. They're using the fusion voting power to endorse and give momentum to major party candidates. But I think that the idea that under the current system, there could be an incremental increase in third-party votes, it doesn't make much sense to me, and I don't think it makes a lot of sense to people. People might get 10%, 15, but okay, they get up to 25. The power of the third party is as a spoiler, and even though few of them use it, it's important. And if we got the ranked choice voting or the star voting, it would make a difference. And we did have a race that was determined by the spoiler over an issue. And that's in Coos Bay, where the Democrat, like their predecessor, supported this environmentally destructive project, the Jordan Cove Energy Project. They didn't campaign much, the third party candidate, Charlene Higgins for the Green Party, but they put it in the voters pamphlet. I oppose the Jordan Cove. And the Republican, of course, is also in favor of it. So enough people voted for that candidate that made the difference. If you presume that, well, it doesn't matter which party they came from, it was bigger than the margin, and that makes a difference. And so that's why people would support a minor party, that it makes a difference in the outcome, not by how many people get elected, because in Oregon it's 0, for a minor party. I don't think a libertarian's ever been elected.
No,
if
what I was thinking about was this Maine situation again, to get back to that, because they had ranked choice voting. They had a Republican, although a relatively moderate Republican as those things go. They had a centrist Democrat with a lot of corporate sponsorship. And they had a Green who was, by all accounts, a very articulate candidate, very progressive. And I would have thought that with ranked choice voting, lots of people who would have voted for the Green as number 1 and the Democrat as number 2, and they would have had to go through this. But apparently, I think only 18,000 people voted for Lisa Savage, who was the Green candidate. It makes me think that maybe it's going to be more than just having a switch in the voting method. It's going to take some time for people to get used to it and to really grasp it and understand how to use it. Because I think that's where they messed up. I mean, it doesn't seem logical to me that only 18,000 of those Democrats are progressive in the whole state of Maine. That seems...
Well, I got two theories about that. One, of course, is that, as you said, it probably takes time for people to get out of the habit of just voting for the major party candidates because that's what they've always done and that's who they take seriously. They're so used to doing that and thinking of the minor party candidates as people that aren't going to win, that they probably keep doing it. The other theory is, and this hasn't been tested to my knowledge, is that the very act of ranking, as opposed to, say, scoring like in star voting, the act of ranking makes you think in terms of which is my top choice in the parties, and you're automatically go to the parties that you think have the best chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even though that's what it's designed to avoid. But okay.
Yeah.
But Charles, you said that the Green candidate was articulate and had some good positions, but wouldn't the voters have looked at their actual governing experience? Many people on the left are rather appalled that a person with no experience in governance, Trump, ends up in the highest office. Okay. Yeah. It's not quite the just pick the 100 people off the street and they do a better job than the Senate. I mean, he's worse. But you kind of would want someone, if you're a person who thinks this is not right to put in anybody, a poser in the White House, that you're necessarily going to vote for someone who's simply articulate for a legislative office. If they don't have the experience, the best third-party candidates, like the independents in Maine, have had major party experience or been in governing, in office as a major party. So what was that third-party candidate's experience, the Green Party,
Lisa Savage.
Yeah, I believe she taught school. But, I know the Bangor, Maine newspaper actually endorsed her.
I see.
Said that based on her performance in the one debate that they permitted with all the candidates, that she was extremely impressive, and they felt that she would be a better candidate than the one that the Democrat or the Republican.
Did she have any money?
Of course not. She's green.
Okay, well, it takes multiple voter impressions for people to actually vote for you. You got to see the lawn signs, you got to read the newspaper endorsement, read the thing in the voters pamphlet like 7 times, 7 favorable impressions, something like that in the political science world. And if she didn't have the money, it wouldn't make up, other things would not make up for the lack of advertising.
Yeah.
Well, I got another theory that I just came up with.
Good.
That's why we're here. It's a brainstorm, right?
So the people who come out to vote are people who are Republicans and Democrats primarily. The people who don't come out to vote, which is a lot of people, even in a high turnout election like this, are the people who haven't been voting, don't identify with the party, haven't been paying that much attention because they don't feel like anyone represents them. So for third parties are not going to capture Democrats and Republicans. Generally, they got to look to people who have not been voting and find those so-called independents that could resonate with their message and tell them, look, you actually have a chance. I'm not sure how true that is, but I think that may play some role in it.
Well, yeah, I think in order for the third parties to make a splash with the larger section of the dependable electorate, the major party voters, they got to do something like what kicked off the independent party, which was to raise John Frohmeyer, an establishment person, running for Senate. That got a lot of attention. Oh, he's not the usual marginal candidate. He's not part of the fringe. Jim Torrey, a known Republican, mayor of Eugene, was offered up as an independent party candidate. They haven't had any success in recruiting candidates like that, nor has the Greens. And they've both reverted. The independent party has stayed more influential, perhaps, because they have the open primary. But
the number one reason why they've been able to do better than some minor parties is that they got the name independent. And people like that name. It's much more attractive because everybody likes to think they're an independent-minded
I think
voter.
they got something going for them with that open primary, so that it's easy to get involved, and for people in major parties who are losing according to the constraints of the major party, it's easy to get some power leverage through the independent party.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you've got, I mean, the one thing a third party has to do is they have to get a candidate with name recognition, because they cannot afford to establish name recognition after the fact. You know, they cannot afford all those ads. There's no money. And if they get the money, then they'll be compromised and won't be any good anyway. So, you know, you've got to have them be, you know, you've got to get the Ralph Naders or whoever to come out and be your candidate. You know, somebody who has name recognition across the spectrum of whatever the whatever you're running for. But that's not so easy.
Looks like we got maybe 5 minutes left on our free Zoom call. I think that's about right.
Yeah.
So what do we want to tie up with? What kind of final thoughts do you have on this? This is your last chance ever to get together and talk.
Well, I think, yeah, I'm still like unsure how anybody, well, Trump can't, and we knew he can't, but how Biden is ever going to be successful. I mean, as a president, given the situation we have in the country, given that Trump, I think, is not going to shut up, he's not going to go away. He's going to be offended that he lost. Yeah, but he's going to keep, you know, throwing bombs. That's what he does. And there's no, I mean, it's not as though Biden has a policy agenda. You know, the Democrats don't have a policy agenda. They just have a policy of not being Republicans.
He's going to come into office with a divided country, probably a divided Congress, and a divided party, for that matter. So
Right.
he's got his work cut out for him.
I do think we're still going to continue nationally and in Oregon this urban-rural divide, and for all the news media that we have, and opportunity for everybody to live in the country and read the media and opinions from all over the world, the basic attitudes seem to be a lot from where you're born or where you live. Mm-hmm. And I was really surprised to see that the fairly popular new legislator in my part of Lane County, Marty Wilde, only won by 8 points over a really, fairly likable but not experienced or well-known Republican. And I know that the district includes a lot of rural areas. And so a legislator like Marty, who I'm not aware of any dissension from factions within the Democratic Party, would I otherwise, I think, scored 75 or 80% victory. Mm-hmm. And yet instead just was within 5 points of, over or 8 points over the Republican. So in Oregon, and now you have to look, are Oregon's Democrats even attempting or aware and able to project this unifying thing? It may not add up to much for policy, but it is an approach. Is Tina Kotek, is Kate Brown, are they going to try to mimic what Biden thinks can work? Is like, hey, with anything but the hate and armed rallies outside of vote counting centers, any of that is scary. Are they going to be able to project that, or are they going to use this majority, supermajority thing to just ram the Democratic perspective in?
No, they won't be able to, because the Republicans can still walk out. The situation here is really analogous to what happened in Congress. Our Democrats in Oregon were thinking maybe we can build on this supermajority and gain the 2/3 votes needed to actually have a quorum without needing the Republicans there, and then we can pass whatever we want. But they didn't make it. They actually lost the seat, I think, when it all comes in. They lost 1 seat in the House. So it's just the same. And plus the vote levels for all the statewide candidates for the Republicans, I was surprised at how high it was. Mm-hmm. So Trump was pulling them all, and Jo Ray Perkins against Jeff Merkley, she was still getting like 40% or something.
Yeah. Another example. Yeah.
The other thing that we have to deal with here in Oregon, I think, and we shouldn't put lightly, is this whole thing with the rioting and in Portland, whatever we want to call it, demonstrations in Portland. There's a lot of anger about that. The right wing has been, using that as a tool, to paint all Democrats as, socialist, wild-eyed radicals, and something has to be done to defuse that. And they just reelected Wheeler, who obviously hasn't been doing a great job of diffusing that situation so far. I think that's got to wind up somehow, and I don't know how it's going to wind up.
It doesn't play well in the media.
No, it does not.
I think that the backlash to those demonstrations was more just a result of the fair news coverage of what was happening, as opposed to the Republicans' ability to exploit it. If we're judging by the Trump campaign with its harsh 1950s anti-communist commercials. Later on, I realized these were things they wrote not just for Bernie Sanders, but down there in Florida, where the Cold War is still alive with the Cuban and Venezuelan refugees. The Trump campaign had a whole nother rack of TV commercials that were a lot more effective. Say what you will, but hey, there's a good economy for you and so on. Our guy is kind of temperamental and all that, but what really matters is you're doing okay. But there was no press for the late night protesters that tried to say they were not effectively covered. They don't believe in working with the mainstream media, so they were their own worst enemy as far as triggering any backlash.
And then they're not always responsible for the people who are breaking the windows, but that gets media attention.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
I think the people in Seattle were a little bit more proactive at shutting down the image, the negative imagery of some of the things than the Portland demonstrators. I didn't hear. I believe there were people on the scene who stepped up to prevent the kind of violence, but it wasn't nearly enough to make up for the overall impression of anarchy in the streets or violent rioters.
Well, those protests aren't over. The pandemic's not over. The economic downturn's not over. The presidential election's
not over now, but I hope it's over in an hour or two.
2020 isn't over yet. That's the main problem. January 1st, things are going to turn around. They have to.
Well, we're counting on your old hometown there of Vegas.
We have a lot of material for the
Michigan
comedians.
came through. That's my real hometown.
Oh, yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah, a lot of material for the comedians today with the Trump supporters. Don't count the votes in one state, count the votes in the next state, just depending on who's alive.
Yeah, so far the courts are laughing at them, which I think is an appropriate response.
Yeah.
Well, okay, guys. I think we've about exhausted our ability to prognosticate.
Add anything to what everyone else is saying. We've contributed to the information overload of our times.
Yeah.
Maybe
we'll get together at the end of the year to do a retrospective. What was the worst political event of 2020 out of the many you have to choose from?
That would be tough.
Okay, well, thanks all you watching at home or wherever you're watching this, if you made it this far. And please continue to look for our videos. You can click the red subscribe button at the lower right and on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up if you actually like this. And if not, don't hit anything. Just move on to something else. All right.